ACM. Hayetsk LCM. Good day, respected ones. And it really is a good day. For the first time in many years, we're back together, reconnecting with each other, and an opportunity for exploring new ideas and learning together. To start us off in a good way, I want to invite to the stage members of the Hunkaminam language team, Sesmalat, Deanna Miller, and Carlin Andres. Please join me in welcoming them.
Hayetsk ACM, I Tanasiya, I Kutanasialahwa, I Kutanasioanas, Wananu Aitanashgoloan, Quans Equatsnala Tanat Whale, Antha Carlin Andres, Talitsanat Skaitsi, Amit Sap Quathuilam Tanatamoch, Skaitziash, I Tanatamoch, Quantlinach, I Shmathwiash, I Samyamash Masteoch. Tsats tamnita swallop to noel, eats tsatitlam slak yakula slak, taliat, hulami, Anton George to squeak.
Whoa!
Thank you, Sesmalot, Deanna, and Carlin, for an incredible opening and a welcome to your territories of Kwantlen and Catesy and to those of Matsqui and Semiahmoo on which our district resides. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Pugh. I have the incredible privilege of being the district principal for the Aboriginal program. And I will be your MC for today. And as you can tell, I'm filled with emotion. It's been a long journey to get here. And I hope today will be a powerful day of learning for everyone. I'd now like to invite to the stage our Superintendent, Mal Gill, to share some words on behalf of the district.
Welcome, everyone. It's a beautiful day. This morning, as I was getting in the car to drive here early this morning, I got a text from a very good friend, Luke Dandaran, and wish me luck, because he just knows how much I love all of this. Funny, the careers you choose, public speaking was never one of my fortes. So this makes me really, really nervous. Just wishing me well today. And I said to him, it's going to be a good day. And he responded with, no, it's going to be a beautiful day. And so thank you for that. I look around this morning and I see some amazing, wonderful faces. The people who every single day make a difference in the lives of our kids. And I welcome all of you this morning, and I sensed the energy as I walked in this morning, honestly, my heart grew, and I appreciate it. I want to thank Carlin, to Deanna, and Sesmalot for starting the day in a beautiful way. Sorry. When they sing, when they welcome us, it just, again, I close my eyes as I hear their voices, and I just center myself. I center myself with that calmness that they bring, again, helps me focus on the work that needs to be done. Today is about connections and relationships. I'm old enough to remember 2015 when we, as a district, connected at CLA at an Odyssey Conference. And I remember the good feelings, and I remember the conversations that happened as a result of that wonderful day. The legacy that was established from that day. And lots of things have happened since then, and we hadn't gone back to that. And last year, when we were online, as we try and do every single year, what we tried to do is we tried to get feedback from all of you to say, you know what, how do we do this better? And I think without fail, what we heard from almost everybody we spoke to was that we have to come together. We have to be face to face. Because the learning and the impact that togetherness brings, and those connections bring, and that good feeling bring, and the energy brings, helps us prepare for that next step. Helps us in that journey that we face every single day, and making a difference in the lives of every single student that we touch. And that's not easy work. I acknowledge that. But it is the most important work that we do. It is the work that we do. It is the why of our work. Every child that we work with is somebody's child. I know that when last year, I guess it wasn't last year, it was a few months ago when I had the privilege of presenting to a lot of you, many of you online, I told the story of my daughter and the struggles that she faced and the team of people who came side by side to help her and the difference that made in her life. And the worry and the fear that I face when I think about what if that team wasn't there? What if the people like all of you weren't there for her? Thank goodness that educators, the people in this room, don't turn their back on kids like mine. That they stand together, working together to ensure that they're going to be successful and have every single opportunity to succeed. We do talk about every child matters, absolutely. Today, it's about Indigenous learners and how we can learn together and do more. We do that together. We do that in partnership with LTA, QP 1851, 1260, and LPVPA, and our exempt staff. We do that with the two Taylors, Taylor Fateau and Taylor Hollabaugh, with Carrie Schaefer, Kim Anderson. We do that because we all believe in the same thing. We believe that every child and every student in our district deserves a chance to transition well into the future and have hope. And we do. We create hope. I think I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again. When we have the opportunity to work with children, and people will say, you're being dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. And we get that aha moment, or we get that moment where that student who wasn't being regulated becomes regulated, or sees the opportunities, or the strengths that they have. When we see that, when we get that, I will honestly say that we are saving a life. And people may snicker and they may laugh and say, saving a life? Yes, the trajectory of that child's life changes, oftentimes in that moment. Oftentimes with that individual extra effort that you put in. And it makes all the difference. And it can be hard. But as a parent, I thank you for that. As a superintendent, I'm humbled by your work and effort that you put in every single day. And I am so proud to stand here as the superintendent of this wonderful district. Because where else can you get this many people make the choice to be here, except in Langley? I hear it all over the province. Something good is happening. And that something good is the people that are in this room. Today we're very lucky. We have the opportunity to have some connections, opportunities to delve a little bit deeper into learning and culture. With that, we're going to have the people of the Copper Shield here dancing. And then very excited to have the wise words of Drew Hayden-Taylor as well. But again, I just want to say one more time that as we go through our journey to ensure that every child has an opportunity to succeed and transition well into the future, that we do that together, face to face today, connecting with one another, finding the strength in each other's strengths, learning together so that we can make a difference in the lives of our kids. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Superintendent Gill. I also want to take this opportunity to recognize Vice Chair Marnie Wilson, who's here on behalf of the trustees today. And I also want to recognize the incredible work of our Professional Services Department, but specifically of Director of Instruction, George Kozlovic, and from my department, along with myself, Janet Stromquist and Brian Coleman, who spent many, many hours together planning that session. And don't worry, Janet, I'm not going to make you stand up. But thank you to all of you for the work that's gone in to make this an incredible day. And as we sat together and planned for Odyssey this year, we held true to the piece that without truth and an understanding of the truth, you can't have reconciliation. And as Mal alluded to earlier, we had that incredible day at CLA many years ago hearing from Luke Dandurand and his mom, Josette, from Chief Marilyn Gabriel, from Richard Wagamies, talking about the truth. And we continue on that journey of truth, and it's important we keep that at the forefront. But sometimes learning the truth is understanding and recognizing the incredible strength and resiliency and the diversity within Indigenous communities, and the incredible achievements of Indigenous peoples throughout these lands. And so today, we're honored to have here to start us off the Git Hayetsk Dancers. Git Hayetsk means the people of the Copper Shield in Smalgeth, spoken by the Nishka, the Shimshan, and Gitsan nations. The dancers are bonded by their common ancestry to the Smalgeth-speaking peoples, with distinctions in their family ties to the Haida, the Tlingit, the Haisla, and Musqueam nations. The Git Hayetsk Dancers challenge themselves to learn and practice the artistry of dance, song, composition, choreography, and regalia making to the standards of wealth, power, and prestige embodied by the Copper Shield. With deep love and respect for their communities, they draw their strengths together to give life to the songs and dances of their ancestors, as well as bring to life new ones that reflect their experiences as First Nations people today. The Git Hayetsk Dancers share their songs and dances at ceremonial and public events in urban and rural communities throughout Canada, the US, and abroad. They are led in partnership by Michael D'Angeli, assistant professor at the University of the Fraser Valley, and artist and dancer Mike D'Angeli with their sons Nick, Michael, and Hayetsk D'Angeli. Please join me in welcoming the Git Hayetsk Dancers.
Amagansag the Chatnis Newsome, Amagansag in our language, and some Algach is good morning. You want to give that a try? Teachers, Amagansag. Oh, local Amtsabsum. As you know, our languages are critically endangered, so any word that you can speak in any of our languages on the coast here, we greatly appreciate as you help to breathe continued life into our lip algach, our language. Sim giget sigedem hanana gabat waltzich gabat erachatni negadam we amapasam dot o. In our language, I've acknowledged all of our chiefs and matriarchs, whether they are here, whether they are on the other side, and all of you who have gathered today in this beautiful and unceded territory of the Katsi, Kwantlen, Maskwi, and Semiahmoo people. In our language, refer to them as Dahdo. Simthodam nu simduayu, naksu gwa'a, gatsamilth duet, shkushkam yu gwa'a, dimgyot Hayetsk duet, nari kim gwa'a, Hayetsk duet, nari ni gwa'a. Git Hayetsk Nuum. Hil Dalikski Gedam, Geltitsabum Will Witwatgum. My name is Simthlodam Newsom, as was shared. My other name is Dr. Michael D'Angeli, and I'm a professor at the University of the Fraser Valley in the School of Creative Arts. My nachs got Samilth, Mike D'Angeli, who is an artist and carver, as well as our son Nick D'Angeli, who is a filmmaker, actor, and model, and our youngest, Hayetsk D'Angeli, who is the first speaker of our language in 2 generations. Together, we hold the leadership of the Git Hayetsk, as was shared. Hayetsk is Copper Shields. Git Hayetsk is the people of the Copper Shield. We again raise our hands in gratitude. Upsamlokot oyaksit nyanda dat o wilwalaiskum to our Coast Salish relatives for allowing us to practice our culture in their unceded territories. Specifically, says Slamat oyaksit nyandath. It really meant a lot to hear your beautiful words, and Haukumelam this morning to hear your beautiful songs. It's always an honor to share the stage with you, as well as to be in your people's unceded territory. Says Lamat. Why?
Amagun flag. Oh, you guys just failed that test. Let's try it again. Amagun flag. All right, now that we've taken care of that, a little bit of housekeeping. It is okay to applaud. We've appropriated that, and we like the way it sounds. The reason we have the screen up, we have that screen up, and we've asked people not to go behind the screen. For the uninitiated, in our feast potlatch system, you cannot, if you have not been through our system of initiation, you cannot go behind the screen. So we ask that we keep that space safe. I'm glad that everybody honored that this morning, including my buddy Drew, who said, Mike, I didn't recognize you in your work clothes. So thank you for saying that rather than, Mike, and this is what I usually get, Mike, I didn't recognize you dressed. Yeah, that's not a good way of starting the day. So, but thank you for that. It is okay to take photos and video. Please tag Mike D'Angeli of the Git Hayetsk Dancers. This is how we get the moccasin telegraph going. The very first song that we shared with you is an old and ancient song. And the D'Angeli family would sing this song when we would travel from the Nass River to visit our Tlingit relatives in the Stikine River in southeast Alaska. And when we sing back and forth and we sing multiple times, it lets our relatives know that the D'Angelis are coming. We now use this to let our relatives all up and down the coast know that the Git Hayetsk are coming. The second song, as we were introducing, is another paddle song. We were metaphorically backing in our canoes, and I'd like to thank my dear friend Fern for also being so respectful and amazing. Thank you for allowing us to do our work in your beautiful unceded territory. We're going to roll out our longhouse floor while we dance our noch noch, and we'll roll it back in when we complete our day. This is our protocol. You're going to see our dancers honoring our Sigimhanach and Simgiget, our matriarchs and our chiefs, our leaders, our most relied upon people in the village. We're going to scatter Pakwa. Pakwa is the eagle and swans down. This is the closest to heaven that we get in this mortal form. When as we're dancing and through our sharing here today, if the feathers land on you, please take it as a blessing, as a sign of, I guess in English you would say good luck. And at the end of the day, or at the end of our time with you, you're more than welcome to keep this part of your own medicine bundle. This is our Amhalite, our peace dance, honoring all of our leaders. Shlogodam Godsamana! Waiwa! You're going to see our young ones dancing a lot of our noch noch, and noch noch means beyond human power, and they are personified through our milk, our masks, and other ceremonial beings that we'll be sharing and using today. It's really beautiful to see. How old is Tutu now? She is 8? Just turned 7, and Em is 6. And my son Hayek's is 4. So to be seeing these young ones, my wife and I grew up in a time, and we're dancing at a time when this wasn't cool, when this wasn't the thing to do. My grandparents survived the potlatch ban, and for them to hold on to everything that we have and to share it, and growing up with that was a huge blessing. But to see them so young, and then my nephew Gabe is 3, almost 3. And he's just starting his journey in learning how to dance our noch noch. So it means so much as a leader, as the leader of one of the leaders of the group. It means a lot to be able to see that. This next song that we're going to be sharing was we received in trade through a dear relative by the name of Sa'aplak, Bob Baker of the Squamish people. Much like with our Coast Salish relatives here in the South, we use this bean to get everybody's attention in the feast hall. To get everybody's attention in here. For us on the West Coast, being a witness is one of the most prestigious places to be. It is your job to witness. It is your job to watch. It's your job to hear, to feel it in your heart, and then eventually go share it. This was before we had social media and all the beautiful stuff of uploading reels and videos and whatever else is out there. It was your job. You personified that. So we're going to ask you guys to do that again. And we're going to dance Anacha in Sadumpty, the Thunderbird. This being amongst the Squamish is called Anacha in Somali it is Sadumpty. And you're going to see, in English it is a Thunderbird, sorry. And you're going to see my wife and 2 sons dancing all the beautiful colors in the rainbow that Samagdalaha, the Creator, has given us. And we have names for every one of those colors, so we argue that makes them traditional. This is Anacha in Sadumpty, the Thunderbird. Oh, I was just going to ask if she was ready. So you're going to hear me hollering through most of the day, Shlogodam Godzamana. And sometimes they say oh, which is yes, and sometimes they say ein. So I'm going to ask you guys if you're ready for this. Shlogodam Godzamana. Oh, you guys were paying attention. You guys are just awesome. So you want to help me ask her if she's ready? Shlogodam Godzamana. Okay, now we're ready to rock the house. This is Anacha in Sadumpty, the Thunderbird. So did we get everybody's attention? Yeah, you guys all ready to be witnesses? Oh, we Hayetsk, awesome. So I'm just checking my song list here. So I make my living as an artist and carver. This song was composed for my first totem pole raising in 2000, long time ago. I am just starting my 30th totem pole. The next few totem poles, actually there'll be 9 when everything is said and done, for our murdered or missing relatives and our residential school survivors. They are going from Prince Rupert all the way down to Vancouver. And it's been an absolute honor and privilege to be an artist and carver and sharing and acting as ambassador for our people all over the world. Okay. So this song was to commemorate that first totem pole raising in 2000. And that pole, although I didn't start it, I finished it. And I actually had about 10 people working on it as apprentices to teach them how to carve a pole, but also host a traditional yauch, a traditional pole raising potlatch. And we had about 500 kids from the Vancouver school area come and put their hands on the totem pole and make that pole, that an, come to life. So that was really beautiful to be able to have that. And so that pole was an eagle and a bear, which happens to be my wife's crest and one of my crests. So we're going to have a little something extra special. We're going to have our young ones leading this one out. And this is our eagle song. Slogurum Godzmana! And here I thought my little guy was smiling at me the whole time. And here there's a big screen behind me, and he was just so excited to see himself. And I'm just smiling away at my son. Yeah, that leads right up into this next song. So this song was composed by my Wek, my brother from another mother, Tim Lannon, David Nelson III of Metlakatla, Alaska. He and I grew up together, and he's an amazing song composer. And this song honors one of my favorite cultural heroes. His name is Tamsin. Tamsin is a transformer, a shapeshifter, a trickster. Tamsin is human personified. Tamsin represents the very best of us, the very worst of us. He transforms into many different shapes and forms, but his favorite form and favorite being is the raven. Now, he's not Raven, and everybody says, oh, Raven, he stole the sun and the moon and the stars. No, that's Tamsin. Raven is his favorite form. And so you're going to see all of Raven's beautiful colors. And at one time, ravens were pure white. And we don't say amongst our teachings that he stole, because when he released the sun and the moon and the stars, that benefited us all. So for us to call him a thief or to steal it is calling him a thief, and that's not a good place to be. So we say he released them. So you're going to see Tamsin in all of his beautiful shapes, forms, and colors. And if you know our dance group, you know that Tamsin loves to tease us. So you've all been warned. And Alexism for all the wonderful donations. Yago Sabich, I'm just teasing you all. So if you lost something, please come forward and get it off of Helen, Hayek's, Em and Tutu, Joyce, and Millie. Now that we got you up here, we're going to get you dancing. No, I'm just teasing, I'm teasing. Everybody get something back? Awesome. So for us, if you lost something, raise your hand. Be loud, be proud, raise your hand. For us, when something from the supernatural world touches us in the mortal realm, that is a huge blessing. So let's give them a round of applause. How you guys doing? Well, this side, I heard, I'm good, I'm great. This side's rowdy. You guys are quiet. Drew, I would expect more from your side, buddy. How you guys doing on this side? Whoa, how about you guys in the front? Oh, we hoist Getzaben. Good job. Awesome. So, I am going to get you guys to dance. We're going to switch it up a little bit because you guys are an awesome crowd. So we're going to divide you guys up into our 4 main clans for our invitational. That if you have your own clan and you hear eagle, wolf, killer whale, or raven, then you're more than welcome to dance. But we're going to divide you guys up. We're going to make this row and this row here, these two guys, these ones right here, we're going to make you guys Lachskik. Can you guys say Lachskik? That's the eagle clan. Awesome. This group right over here on the end, and this group right here, you two fingers are going to be Ganhada. Can you guys say Ganhada? That's the Raven clan. So from right here, these two, and this one, we're going to make you guys, and the top row, this row right here, in the back here, and these two are going to be the Gispaguara, the Gisgas, the killer whale. Can you guys say Gispaguara? So that leaves all of you guys right here. You guys are going to be our Lachgibu, our wolf clan. Can you say Lachgibu? Awesome. What sound does a wolf make? So for our killer whales, our Gispaguara, he goes psh. Awesome. Our Ganhada, you just heard our raven sound. What sound does a raven make? A lot of crows, but that's okay. And our eagles, let's hear you. If you can whistle, it means you're a good kisser. All right, so we're not going to not show you how each of these dances go. I'm going to have my wife show all the Lachskik, the eagles. Oh. My wife giving me the boss here. This is a test. I couldn't hear you. Only a test. So the eagles, you're going to have your arms nice and wide, and you can soar. And if you're a good young eagle, you can do a little bit of hopping around. But if you're a mature eagle, you can glide just a little bit more. There'll be no walking eagles today. That's an adult joke. I'll tell it later when there's not so many kids around. The ravens, I'm going to get Nick. So there are 2 ways. The women dance one way, and I'll get my wife to show one way with her hands on her hips. Kind of looking, we say adzix. Your nose way up in the air. You just think you're the best thing since sliced bread. And then for some of the men, they get nice and low. For us on the West Coast, it's about how low you can go. Or you can just kind of hop around. One more time, son. Remember, they're being tested on this. There you go. All right, so my ravens and eagles, you guys got what you're going to do? Awesome. So we need killer whales. Oh, hey. My nephew Kodiak here is killer whale. So we'll get him to show you, as well as my Knox, how the killer whale will use their hands as acting as their pectoral fin, but also as their dorsal fin. So make sure you go all the way into that corner so they can see you guys dance in that. And sometimes you go and blow it out your blowhole. Psh. Beautiful. Look at you guys. It's like you guys have been dancing all day. And our last group are rowdy wolves. So Millie, Joyce, and Helen are all wolf clan. You're going to see them put one arm out front, acting as the snout, and the other arm acts as their tail, and they switch back and forth. Go ahead, ladies. And when they're looking and they see something that they really like, they'll take a knee and... I think we got the right group of wolves. You guys are nice and rowdy. So, you heard me asking my dancers, and I tested you guys earlier. I'm going to ask you if your hearts are ready for this. Awesome. Now, we don't have a lot of time, but if you can make it onto the floor, awesome. If you can't, feel free to dance where you're at. That's okay, but we'd love to see the dance floor full. We're going to call out the eagles, the ravens, the killer whale, and the wolves, and at the end, we'll call out Taniget, which means everybody. So, Shlogodam Godsmana! Git Hayetsk. Waiwa. Let's geek the Milgen. All the eagles in the house. Give them a round of applause. So when you're coming onto the floor, come all the way out on the floor so the people behind you can come on out too. Waiwa! Ganhada de Milgen! All the ravens, crows, and frogs in the house. Give them a round of applause. Waiwa! Gespagwara de Milgen! All the killer whales, come on out. Let's give them a round of applause. Waiwa! Lachkibu de Milgen! All the wolves! Yeah, 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 ha, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, ho, ho, ah, yeah. Yeah, ho, ho, ah, yeah. Yeah, 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 ha, Did you guys enjoy yourselves with that? Awesome. So I heard a lot of squeaking up on this side and that side with those on those bleachers. Awesome job, guys. Lots of beautiful dancing. Just for this moment in time, we allowed you to have these crests if they are not yours. We are actually born into these. So we get them, we're matrilineal, so we get them from our mothers. So everything our mothers and grandmothers and aunties are, we are. So we thank you for honoring us by coming out and dancing in just that moment in time. We now take back those crests unless they're your personal crests. We have to do this because there might be my elder out there might be listening and making sure that I reminded you guys of that. And that's just some of the protocols that we follow. This next song was one of the very first songs that I've ever composed. And it is for my son, Git Hayetsk. He actually holds several names, and his first name, his Tsimshian name is Git Hayetsk, and that's what this song's about. When Nick was born, the Marconium bag broke open, and it got all over the place. The Marconium is thick like molasses and peanut butter. It's super sticky and super thick, and he nearly suffocated and passed away. As I was able to stand with him at the incubator to make sure his blood and his breathing got all right, I was able to wash him off and sing to him to welcome him into this world, to talk him into staying here. And as I was washing and singing to him every song that I knew, I noticed his fingernails and toenails had been stained by the Marconium copper. And to us on the West Coast, copper is one of the most prestigious things and ceremonial beings that we have. You have to feast in potlatch. You have to earn the right to have it on your regalia, let alone tattooed on your skin. So I said he was my little copper boy, a gift from William Ligilaha. At my first potlatch that I hosted, Nicholas received the name Git Hayetsk, his Tsimshian name. And this song was composed. I composed this song with the assistance of David Boxley and Donna Mae Roberts. And this mask was the final that I did with my then teacher to go on and become an artist myself. So that you're going to see some of our most oldest power belonging to our son, Git Hayetsk, at a Git Hayetsk Nick D'Angeli. and Oaxism. It means a lot. We haven't danced that one in a while, and it means a lot to be able to bring that one out and share that one. This next song comes from the research that my Knox has done, and here she comes to introduce the song. This is our photographer's dance.
Who in here has your master's degree? Oh, educators, that's why I said teachers, educators. Up some local oach sit near the hat ni go na tabsam the Thank you so much for all that you do for our young people. As was stated by your superintendent, I believe, in his speech about the impact that you have on each of their lives, I feel like living proof of those teachers that believed in me as a first generation, what became a first generation university student despite my dyslexia. So I am severely dyslexic and I have no family legacy of university. And if it wasn't for teachers who spent time with me to help me embrace the way that I learn, I would not have my PhD. This song is... This song is a part of my master's thesis on the photography of Benjamin Alfred Haldane. If you have your master's, you can get your PhD, all of you that raised your hands. Know this, you can. So I wrote my master's thesis on a Tsimshian photographer from my community named Benjamin Alfred Haldane, who started a portrait studio in 1899. I didn't know when I was writing my dissertation, well, my book project now, I didn't realize when I was writing my thesis on his work that he's considered the earliest professional indigenous photographer in North America. He owned his own studio. This was about indigenous consumption. Our people, our indigenous people from across Alaska and British Columbia were those who purchased photographs of their family, who sat for his images. His photography tells a completely different narrative of my community's history. The way that we continued all of the practices that you see here despite their oppression by colonizers everywhere. This song gets you to think critically too about what is traditional. Because if our people have been using photography for our own means to express who we are since 1899, who's to say what is not our tradition? Our traditions are self-determined by us. And one of the most hurtful things you can possibly say to an indigenous person in their regalia is, that's not traditional. And believe me, we hear it all the time. Our people have an ancient tradition of incorporating all of the tools, technologies, and materials that come into our hands to express our indigeneity. And photography has been one of them for over 100 years.
Eat say ha ya ya hey ha ya ya hey ha ya ya hey ha. Eat say ha ya ya hey ha ya ya hey ha ya ya hey ha. Aya hey ha ya aya hey ha ya aya hey ha ya aya hey ha. We label, we label, we label, we label. Aya hey. say hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. Iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. We label, we label, we label, we label. Iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. Eat say hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. Iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. We label, we label, we label, we label. Iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. Eat say hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. Iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. We label, we label, we label, we label. Iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi ya, iya hey hi. And we're running out of time, so we got one more song to share with you. We actually brought more, but I'm noticing we are a minute over, so I want to be respectful to everybody's time. And it was really beautiful to be able to share as much as we have shared with all of you. That last song, our son Hayek's, that was his first time dancing that publicly. He's got his little toy camera that he's using, and he's learning to dance that song alongside his Nuk. So if we can give him a round of applause. And my dear relative Millie here, her daughter, son-in-law, and 2 granddaughters make 3 generations dancing in the Git Hayetsk Dancers. What a beautiful blessing. It means so much to be able to do this work, to share and squeeze so much into a short amount of time. I hope you're happy with what we shared and showed here today. Our last song, oh, thank you guys. We had about 4 more songs, but you're going to have to come to Hobier or Coastal First Nations Dance Festival, which are all the first weekend in March. And that is March 1st and 2nd for Hobier, March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd for Coastal First Nations. We're dancing on the Saturday and Sunday at Hobier and Coastal. So if you're around, come check it out. Hobier is at the P&E, and Coastal First Nations is at the Anvil Center in New West. It's a beautiful weekend to have lots, and we would love to share more with you guys, but we are out of time. So our last song is our victory song. This song comes from my Tsitsiawit side of my family. According to anthropologists and archaeologists, the Tsitsiawit are extinct, yet myself and my 2 sons stand in front of you as descendants of the Tsitsiawit. Our family would sing this song when they returned home from combat, and they would laugh and taunt their enemies because they had survived. In recent history, my grandfather, a veteran of World War II, when he returned home, our family sang this song. My Uncle Bill was a Marine in Vietnam, and when he returned home, our family sang this song. My 2 brother cousins were in the U.S. Navy and the United States Marines, and I myself served 10 years in the U.S. Army as an airborne ranger. When we returned home from our tours of duty in combat, our family sang this song. Not only do we continue to sing this song for our warriors and our veterans, but we sing it for our residential school survivors. We sing this song for our young ones when they graduate from Head Start to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to college and university. We sing this song every opportunity we can because we are still here. We are practicing our languages, our ways of knowing and being. As I shared with you when my Nux and I first started dancing as little kids, this wasn't the thing to do. Not so long ago, within our mom's generation and parents' generations, this was outlawed. It was illegal. So for us to be able to sing and dance, especially for these young ones, is a huge victory. And so we're calling victory for all of your students, and all of you. My grandfather used to say there's nothing more dangerous than an Indian with an education, so be dangerous. Because he used to say they make the changes this world needs. But my wife and I also add that we also need to be kind to each other. And sometimes we forget to be kind to each other. So I thank you guys for all of that and modeling all of that for future generations. You guys are shaping and molding our future, our leaders. So in Oaxaca, this victory song is for all of us. And we're going to get Hayetsk to lead this song.
Ahio, 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 way, ahio, ahio, hey, hey, hey,
Aha! Ahia! Aha! Ahia! Aha! Ahia! Aha! Ahia!
Und Oaxaca, Gunachish, Gela Kasla, Madu, Magwech, Tanzi, Masich Oi, Shishi, gracias, merci beaucoup, all the beautiful ways we say thank you for a wonderful day in Oaxaca.
Once again, a big round of applause for the Git Hayetsk drummers and dancers. Just an incredible way to kick off our day, and I know we've been sitting for a while, and I know how comfortable those chairs are. Everybody, if you can just stay in place, but as all good teachers, we just take a quick body break, stand up, stretch, and while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. So it's okay, you can stand up, it's okay. Feel free. For the keynote session this morning, we have renowned playwright, author, and comedian Drew Hayden-Taylor. Drew is Ojibwe from the Curve Lake First Nation in Ontario. He has worn many hats in his literary career, from performing stand-up comedy at the Kennedy Centre in Washington, D.C., to being artistic director of Canada's premier Native theatre company, Native Earth Performing Arts. He has been an award-winning playwright, a journalist, columnist, appearing regularly in several Canadian newspapers and magazines, short story writer, novelist, television scriptwriter, and has worked on numerous documentaries exploring the Native experience. Most notably as a filmmaker, he wrote and directed Redskins, Tricksters, and Puppy Stew, a documentary on Native humor for the National Film Board of Canada. And for CBC, he co-created The Searching for Winnetou, an exploration of Germany's fascination with North American indigenous culture. 2 years later, he followed it up with the documentary Cottagers and Indians about indigenous, non-indigenous conflicts over land and water issues. Most recently, The Pretendians aired, exploring the phenomenon of non-native people claiming indigenous heritage. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Drew Hayden-Taylor.
Good morning, everyone. That was a wonderful, wonderful intro, and as we say in my reserve, grazie. It's fabulous to be here, and as is the normal protocol, I will introduce myself and my family and all the sort of things that come with who I am and where I come from. My name is Drew Hayden-Taylor. I am from the Curve Lake First Nation in Central Ontario. My clan is Otter, and how can I put this? At the same time, I come from both a big family and a small family. I come from a big family because my mother was the oldest of 14, which is what used to happen before they had the internet. And at the same time, I come from a small family. I'm the single child of a single parent. And my mother blames that on the fact that when I was born, I was 11 pounds, 13 ounces. Breech. No cesarean. So evidently that was enough for my mother. I like to think I gave her both quantity and quality. Anyways, it's a delight to be here. As you heard, I like to think of myself as what I call a contemporary storyteller. I use that term because traditional storytelling, it used to be primarily oral. You told stories around a campfire, across the kitchen table, whatever. But as people and civilizations changed, so did the art of storytelling. And storytelling went from being primarily oral to being print, theater, radio, television, movies, and even today there are video games that have intricate and detailed narratives within them to make them more enjoyable. So the thing about being a contemporary storyteller is there are so many ways to tell stories in today's age. Half of the fun is coming up with a story, and the other half is what's the best way to tell that story. So as you heard, I work in theater, I do print. I'm currently on a tour for my new novel that's just been released. It's actually my 35th book. I do theater, I do creative nonfiction, documentaries, television, etc., etc., etc. So as I say, a contemporary storyteller has stories to tell and many different ways to tell them in today's world. And my journey as a storyteller, as with all journeys, began as a kid. Growing up on my reserve, I'm sure it's the same on many reserves, there's not a lot to do. You know, I grew up way back in the 60s. We had 2 television stations. And if you don't understand this next reference, find somebody with gray hair and they'll explain it to you. But our 2 television stations were very snowy. And there's only so many times, so many trees to climb, so many times you can go swimming, that things got boring very, very quickly. And so I remember actually when I was 5 years old, sitting on the steps of my house. On my lap, I had a thick stack of comic books. And I remember very distinctly going through them. I was 5 years old, having this thought of, wow, next year I get to go to school and I'll actually be able to read these. I don't know why I remember that, but I just do. The next year I went to school and I learned to read, and it was an absolutely amazing experience because it took me to far off lands. It introduced me to amazing people. I had extraordinary adventures. every book I read was like a passport somewhere, and I just would read and read and read and read. In fact, it got to the point where my grandparents once took my mother aside and said, "Why do you let him read? It's not normal." And that was my first dance with the concept of what is normal. So, to make a long story short, the more I read, the more I became interested in being a writer. Because one of the things I realized that as a writer, you have more control over the universe you create than the universe you live in. And I liked that. So I would read and read, and I began to wonder if I could become a writer, because at that time, there was no Indigenous literature in the curriculum. There was no Indigenous literature in the library. I wasn't even sure there was Indigenous literature. Because as some of you may remember, one of those weird laws the government imposed upon Native people was the fact that at one point we weren't allowed to hire lawyers. And I wondered possibly if that included we weren't allowed to become writers. So I did what a lot of young people traditionally did. I went and sought guidance and wisdom from those older than me. So the first person I went to seeking such wisdom was my grade 11 English teacher. I understand we have some teachers in the audience. I went to my grade 11 English teacher, and I remembered very distinctly. He was sitting at his desk in the homeroom. He was looking for something in the bottom left-hand corner of his desk. I walked up to him, and I said, "Sir, is it possible to make a living from creative writing?" And without even looking up, he said, "No, not really." So that was my first introduction to being a writer. Now, of course, one of the ironic bits of this is, as the decades went by and I became a fairly successful writer, one of the things I get to do quite frequently is travel all across Canada, some cases the States, and other countries. And I talk to a lot of young people. I talk to a lot of schools, a lot of teenagers. And I always like to tell them, the only thing you need to remember, the one nugget of fact you get to walk out of here with, the only thing you need to remember me for is never trust your grade 11 English teacher. And that came from personal experience. The second person I went to was my mother. I told my mother I wanted to be a writer, and my mother said to me, looked at me with a very perplexed look, and said, "Why do you want to be a writer? It's not going to get you anywhere." So this is my mother. Why do you want to be a writer? It's not going to get you anywhere. And I completely understand where my mother was coming from. My mother had a grade 6 education. Her first language was Anishinaabe-Moan, and she'd spent most of her life cooking and cleaning, primarily for white people. So the idea of being a writer was literally not on her radar. And of course, one of the, again, I talk about the importance of normalcy and irony in my life. The decades went by and I became a writer, always remembering those words. Why do you want to be a writer? It's not going to get you anywhere. And I have been to about 25 countries around the world spreading the gospel of Native literature. And I sent my mother postcards from countries as varied as India, China, all through Europe, down in South America, Fiji, all these different places. And on that postcard it said, "Look where writing got me." Of course, I always brought my mother back lots of knickknacks from all these different places. So my mother had the best knickknack collection of anybody on the reserve. So this was my glorious introduction to the world of writing, so I gave up wanting to be a writer. If nobody wanted me to be a writer, if all these people who were older and wiser than me told me not to be a writer, why should I be a writer? So I ended up, just sort of to make a long story short, I had to go do something. I was getting out of college, and I began to notice something, right? I began to do what's called the res math. I told you how big my family was, and my reserve is actually quite small. It's about, when I was growing up, it was about 800-900 people. And my reserve, how big my family was, how small my reserve was. So it became painfully apparent to me in my mid and late teens that I was related to practically every girl on the reserve. And that's as good a reason to go to college as anything. And I'm surprised most colleges and universities never exploit that when recruiting from reserves. But I didn't know what to take because I'd wanted to be a writer. I told I couldn't be a writer. But I was always interested in that because the great thing about artists is they create, hopefully, something wonderful from a sheer figment of their imagination. So I didn't know what to do. I went through, back then it was these books that had a list of all the universities, colleges, and programs. It's all online now. But I went through and I found something called radio and television broadcasting. And I thought, I listen to the radio, I watch television. How hard can it be? So anyways, I went to college. And I got off the reserve, was in Toronto for a while. And in my case, it's one of these situations where I didn't go searching for my art. My art patiently waited in the wings, and at some point came out and booted me in the behind and reminded me that I was an artist and I was ready to be an artist. So I graduated college, and I knew I couldn't be a writer, an artist, but I wanted to be around them because I thought, artists are interesting. They're creative. They're just very interesting people. And if I couldn't be an artist, I'm going to be in something similar to the arts, right? I wanted to be an artistic wannabe. I'm with the band, that kind of thing. So I ended up getting various jobs in the arts. I worked for CBC as a radio producer. I did the location sound on documentaries. I worked for the Canadian Native Arts Foundation, currently called Inspire. And then I got this job on this television series. Literally, I don't know if anybody here remembers this show. It took place in northwestern Ontario about life on the reserve through the eyes of kids. It was called Spirit Bay. And as was the case back then, all the directors were white, all the writers were white, the producers were white, and a third of the cast was white. And I heard about this, and I literally phoned them up and said, you really should have somebody native working in the office, somebody who grew up on a reserve. And they agreed with me, they hired me, but I knew nothing of filmmaking. So I got all the small jobs, production assistant, casting assistant, chaperone. But one of the interesting things I got to do was I was their technical advisor. Because, as we know, the Indigenous people of northwestern Ontario is identical to the Indigenous people in central Ontario, 2,000 kilometers away. So they would give me this stuff to read and say, is this technically accurate? And I would say, yes, Native people eat toast. But while I was there, I learned the structure of half-hour television. I'd take the scripts apart, set them up for production, and through osmosis, I absorbed that. So when the show ended, I had this opportunity. I was writing an article for a magazine on adapting Native stories for television and film format. Talked to all these story producers all over the place to interview them. And I ended up talking to this one. And I don't even remember if it was me or her, but one of us suggested I submit some story ideas just for the heck of it. And I did. What the heck? And it's one of these cases of sometimes when you don't know what you're doing, sometimes you nail it. So I wrote 2 outlines, sent it off. They read it. They liked it. They commissioned it. I wrote it. They shot it, and they aired it. So my very first legitimate writing credit was completely by accident, and it was for a show called The Beachcombers. Having never been to British Columbia. And I was 12. Actually, I was 25, and to the best of my knowledge, they tell me I was the first Native scriptwriter in Canada. I don't know. And actually, I should also say, in some cases, when I'm up here talking about this stuff, and people aren't familiar with me or my work, and they often say, who's the guy with the blue eyes and the light hair on stage? My standard joke that I've been using for 30 years is, I'm half Ojibwe, half Caucasian, so technically that makes me an occasion. Or as I like to say, a special occasion or a memorable occasion. So, anyways, that was my glorious introduction to the world of writing. It went very well, and then afterwards I did a show called Street Legal, North of 60, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But around this time, sorry, just checking the time here, interesting things were happening. This is what I refer to as the contemporary native literary renaissance. There was this sudden explosion of native literature. I told you that when I grew up, there was no native literature anywhere. Suddenly, in the late 80s, early 90s, boom, there was this explosion of plays, of novels coming out of the native community, just overwhelming the Canadian literary scene. I'm most familiar with, of course, this play called The Red Sisters by Thompson Highway. This is the progression of popularity of that play. It was produced in '86. It was remounted. Oh, and when it was produced, nobody came to see it. It was a play by an unknown playwright in an unusual space. It was the Native Friendship Center in downtown Toronto. Cast nobody had heard of, director nobody had heard of. And if everybody here is familiar with the play, right? The theme is basically 7 Native women who want to go to the world's largest bingo game in downtown Toronto. That's the plot. And so during the first week, nobody came to see it. It was just too weird. But the reviewers came out and saw it. During that first week, Thompson and the arts manager had to go out in the street and give away free tickets so people would come in and see the play. But word of mouth came around, and by the end of the 3-week run, it was sold out constantly. And so, produced in '86, '87, they remounted it, did a national tour across Canada. '88, it represented Canada at the Edinburgh Fringe Festivals. And in '89, the sequel came out, Dry Lips How to Move to Kappa's Casing. '91, they remounted Dry Lips, which it was a tri-production between Manitoba Theatre Centre, National Arts Centre, and the Royal Alex in Toronto. And rumor has it, this co-production for 3 different theatres was the first play with over $1 million budget. So that's how strong, how bizarrely popular native theatre became. Also at this time, Jeanette Armstrong, Lee Miracle, Maria Campbell, all these people started writing novels, and suddenly there were novels. The native voice was everywhere, on stage, in the page, and growing in the theater, in poetry, etc. And it was such an interesting, fabulous time to be there. Now, my inclusion in all this is Thompson Highway was the artistic director of Native Earth. He'd gotten a grant for a playwright in residency program, but at that time, early in the contemporary Indigenous literary renaissance, there were 2 working playwrights in Ontario, himself and a man named Daniel David Moses. And he was desperate, and he did what a lot of desperate people do. He went to the bottom of the barrel, and there I was, passed out. And he asked me if I wanted to be the writer in residence, and I said no. Primarily because I didn't know anything about theater. Theater was not technically part of the culture I grew up on the reserve, even though years later I realized theater is the next logical progression of oral storytelling. It's taking the audience on a journey using your imagination, your voice, and your body. But at that time, I thought theater artists were weird, and I still do. But, so I said no, but Thompson cheated. He knew I had this horrible monster constantly chasing me in my 20s, and I couldn't get away, and this monster was called a landlord. And he was a very hungry, voracious monster, and he said, Drew, look at it this way. You're a writer in residence, you sit through the rehearsal of 2 plays, maybe write a play at the end of it, it's 20 weeks' work, and you get a nice big check at the end of every week. And I said, when do I start? So I'm one of the few people who got into theater for the money. So with all that happening, I got into theater. Now, one of the interesting things that was happening during this time, as I said, going back to the term I use, the contemporary indigenous literary renaissance, the vast majority of plays, of novels, books, poetry, etc., coming out of the First Nation community at that time were primarily dark, depressing, bleak, sad, and angry. Almost all the characters that were being created were either oppressed, depressed, or suppressed. And that made sense because, as we all know, when an oppressed people get their voice back, they're going to write about being oppressed. So that's what was coming out. All these stories about the pitfalls, the tragedies, the pain of colonization. In fact, there's a saying Thompson likes to use. Before the healing can take place, the poison must be exposed. So that's what was happening during those first 10, 15 years. Almost everything you would read coming from the Native community dealt with the problems of colonization. And as I said, I was in the middle of this, and I just started my writing career. I was trying to find my voice. I wasn't quite sure that those were the stories I wanted to tell. Because I would look at my mother. My mother was a wonderful, voracious woman. My mother by no means was oppressed, depressed, or suppressed. And I wasn't seeing my mother in any of these stories. And as luck would have it, I found myself on the Blood Reserve in Alberta, talking with an elder there. And I was explaining this to him, and he said to me that in his opinion, for Indigenous people, and I guess all people, humor is the WD-40 of healing. I heard that, and I loved that. I liked that. And it goes well with Thompson saying, before the healing can take place, the poison must be exposed. Humor is the WD-40 of healing. It's all about healing. So that sort of stayed with me, and I liked the idea of healing. I knew there were so many more better, more talented writers out there who could explore and highlight the injustices of colonization, of residential schools, of the scoop up of reserves, etc. I was much more interested in going to the next step of dealing with the healing through humor, because I've been very fortunate. I've traveled to over 150 First Nation communities across Canada and the States. And everywhere I've been greeted with a laugh, a smile, and a joke. And I find that universal for Indigenous people. So I'm there trying to figure out how to bring this revelation to me to the stage. Because just to give you an example, obviously one of the things I get asked frequently is, what do Native people want, or what's the Native reaction to this? And at time of contact, there were 50 to 60 separate languages and dialects spoken in Canada. There is no one Indigenous anything. I often tell people it's like discovering Europe. There's over 50 to 60 separate languages and dialects spoken in Europe, and there's no one European anything. The Danish are as different from the German, who are different from the Italians, who are different from the Portuguese, who are different from the Czechs. Same here. But a universality I do find is the sense of humor. How strong and glorious and magnificent it is. And speaking about my community, I mean, some of the more darkest moments with my family and my community ended in laughter, that healing. Once my Aunt Gertrude was in the hospital with some sort of heart issue, and of course, I told you how big the family is. There were about 15 of us in the waiting room, just sitting around trying to see what's going to happen and all that in the ICU. And at one point, a nurse came in and asked us to keep it down. We were laughing too loudly and too much for the emergency waiting room. It was throwing people off. People were trying to sleep. People were in comas, damn it. And so we were told to keep it down. When my mother passed away, I went to see the undertaker, the funeral director, and I went with 2 aunts, 2 cousins, my partner, and myself, all women, myself, and we're meeting with the funeral director, planning everything, and we were laughing. We were remembering my mother. How would my mother want this to happen? Like, for example, my mother's favorite flower were sunflowers. But my mother had the nerve to pass away in January, where there were no sunflowers. And those that were imported in, had been hoovered up the week before by Chinese New Year. So we had to get my mother's second favorite flower, which would probably have annoyed her. So anyways, we're doing all this, we're laughing, and at the end, when we're getting up to leave, the funeral director stood up, leaned over to me, and shook my hand, saying, "I don't normally get to say this, but that was fun." So this is the humor I've come across in my life visiting Native communities. And I've always, for me, this was how I wanted to give something back to the community. I would write funny articles for magazines and newspapers. And I wrote my very first, I did a lot of YA work, theater for young audiences, but I wrote my first adult play. And it was a full-fledged, unabridged comedy that was just a sheer celebration of the indigenous sense of humor with absolutely no socially redeeming qualities whatsoever. It was called The Bootlegger Blues, and it was a play about a 68-year-old good Christian Ojibwe woman who, through a series of circumstances, finds herself in possession of 143 cases of beer that she has to bootleg in order to buy an organ for the church. And it's loosely based on a true story. My mother was so angry when I wrote that play. So I started to write these comedies, never thinking they would go anywhere, because Native theater, by definition, was angry. It asked uncomfortable questions. It made the white audience squirm in their seat. It pushed the envelope. So many people were saying, a Native comedy is an oxymoron. Which for me, I was astounded by people saying that, because to me, that was the experience of traveling across this country, meeting Indigenous people, and just having a good laugh no matter where I went. Now, this sort of sets up, this is way back before, during the beginning of the political correctness movement. I gotta tell you a story about the production of that play. I got a phone call once from back in the days when people phoned and didn't email, from somebody who said, "We read your play and we want to produce it." And they were a mainstream theater company, which my first reaction was, wow, I can finally get me some settler money. And they said they wanted to produce it, so I said, great, let's sign the contract, send me the check. And we ended up, doing the normal thing. We did auditions, we did rehearsals, and we ended up doing the play at a theater company. I think it was called Lighthouse Theater, in a town called Port Dover. And so what you need to know is it's primarily summer theater, tourists, bus tours, that kind of thing. The theater seats 311 people, and I said, my play is about bootlegging at a powwow. And so opening night comes. We worked hard, we rehearsed, all that. So excited to have my first play done by a mainstream theater company. We're 311 people sitting in this theater. The lights go up. It's packed. Comedy starts. Absolute silence. Nobody's laughing. Off in the distance, you can hear coyotes howling. Tumbleweeds went across the stage. And I'm sitting there looking at this going, I'm beginning to think, well, there goes all that settler money. And I didn't understand what was going wrong, because I said, it said on the poster it was a comedy. And I'm looking around, and all these people, all these vast majority non-native people have very straight faces. Now, as I said, it seated 311 people. It was packed, almost all white, all except for 10 people in the balcony. Because the thing I didn't tell you is Port Dover is 20 minutes away from the largest First Nations community in Canada. 6 nations with over 25,000 Haudenosaunee people, and 2 of the cast members were Haudenosaunee. And so every performance, 6 to 10 aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, parents, whatever, would come and see it. So in this entire theater, 311 people, all absolutely quiet, because they didn't, the reason they were quiet, I found out later, is basically they were used to being made to feel guilty at a Native play. Now here's a play about Native people and beer. They didn't know how to react. But the 10 people in the balcony, the Native people, started laughing from the very first moment. They were howling all the way through it. And I started watching them, and the most interesting thing happened. After about 5 or 6 minutes, the circle of white people around them started to laugh. Another 5, 6 minutes, another circle of white people around them started to laugh. And that's basically how it went. It was like throwing a rock in a pond, and the ring got bigger. By the end of the first act, everybody was laughing. And the play was a big success. I ended up having 3 or 4 other plays there. So at this time, as I said, nobody really knew Native people had a sense of humor, except for those who'd been inside our community. So I started writing more and more comedy, and this is where things get really interesting as I check the time. The contemporary Indigenous literary renaissance began to go into its second stage, what I refer to as the embracing and celebration of genre fiction. Native authors, I think, are as talented, as creative, and as imaginative as mainstream authors. So through getting a certain amount of comfortableness and understanding of how to write for audiences, we began to explore genre fiction. I got another phone call from a publisher asking me if I'd be interested in writing them a novel. And I said, no. Novels are scary. It's a marathon, not a sprint like a play. And you know the whole stereotype of novel writers. You spend 10 years working on a novel. You send it out to a dozen publishers. It gets turned down. You put it in the bottom drawer of your desk, and you spend the rest of your life as an alcoholic. That didn't appeal to me. So I told them, no, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And they said, no, you misunderstand us. We want to pay you in advance. We want to commission you for a novel. And my first reaction was, that's cheating. But then I said, what the hell? We signed the contract, and I went home dancing because I thought, I've got a novel. I'm a grown-up writer. I'm going to write a novel. And I was happy for about 20 minutes until I realized what I'd signed. I'd signed a legal document requiring me on a very specific date to deliver a manuscript consisting of no less than 60,000 words. And I was fairly sure I didn't know 60,000 words. Anyways, I ended up trying to figure out what to write. I ended up deciding to, because all these years of cultural appropriation, I thought, I want to turn the tables. So I decided to take a myth, a story from European culture, and indigenize it. So I wrote my first vampire novel, an indigenous vampire novel called The Night Wanderer. And I was told there's no such thing as native vampires, and I said, well, there is now. So around this time, amazing things started happening, right? That was that. My second novel was was a genre I'd never heard of until I read about it from reviewers. I'd written something called magic realism, whatever that is. I wrote a collection of Indigenous science fiction. I wrote a literary novel. The novel that's coming out right now that I'm on a tour for is an Indigenous horror novel. So I'm having fun doing all these different types of storytelling, which, going back to my original premise of being a contemporary storyteller, what I'm doing as a contemporary storyteller is taking the traditions and the spirit of the stories we were told as young people and contemporizing them, giving them the same heart. We're just putting a new set of clothes on them. I remember talking to a traditional storyteller once who hugged me and said, we need the new stories as much as we need the old stories. And so anybody here who's familiar with the work of Wabigisha Grice, Sherry Demerlane, Tom King, when he's not writing award-winning fiction, nonfiction, his hobby is murder mysteries. A friend of mine, Katariak Dam, compiled, edited, and published a collection of international Indigenous erotica, what I refer to as 50 Shades of Red. So we're in an age now where we have lots of stories to tell, lots of ways to tell them, but we're still keeping the spirit of the stories we were told as kids. And I consider it, not only is it an honor, a privilege, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. And with that, I will thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Drew, for sharing your own personal stories around storytelling and the importance of storytelling and the power that exists. And for also, I don't think I'll ever forget the line, humor is the WD-40 to healing, and how important it is. Before we all move, just a couple of instructions and some final thoughts. This does conclude our opening session here at the LEC. I want to thank again Sesmalot, Deanna, Carlin, Mal, the Git Hayetsk drummers, and of course Drew Hayden-Taylor for being part of this morning's session. A round of applause for all of them. The remaining sessions of our learning today will all take place at RE Mountain Secondary. In just a bit, we will dismiss from here. My suggestion is, if you haven't parked over there, you're not getting a spot, so we're walking over. There is no check-in at RE Mountain. You'll just go directly to your first session, which we've given half an hour. We'll start just a little later today at 11 o'clock a.m. There will be a break from 12:15 to 12:45 with session number 2 starting at 12:45. Going till 2 o'clock today. Please make sure you attend the sessions you registered for. Refreshments and snacks will be located throughout the building at RE Mountain. If you have any questions, find the volunteers in the blue shirts that say I can help on the back. Okay, last thing, I swear. Hold on, just before you move. We do recognize that some of the topics that will be discussed today can be upsetting and emotional, and for some, they may need a quiet space to go. We have created quiet rooms on each of the 3 levels. There will be signs there if you need that space to go and decompress. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a wonderful day of learning. You may now move to RE Mountain.